right, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of The Rough Report. I am Jimmy Ruffian, reporting to you live from downtown Toronto. Such lovely weather we're having today, isn't it? Here in the GTA. If you are in the GTA. If you aren't in the GTA, and in case you did not notice, I am being sarcastic. It sucks outside right now. And that just kind of matches how, I guess, everything's generally going. Just a whole lot of it sucks out there right now. And that's what we're going to be talking about. I think that's generally what this show tends to talk about, is how it sucks out there right now. So if you are joining us and you are, here live right now, be sure to be active in the chat. We'd love to know that you're here. We'd love to know what's on your mind. We'd love to know if you'd like to call. All right, let's get to turning off that music here. Give it a nice, gentle roll off there. Because we're stylish like that around here. All right, what do we got on the docket today? I think pretty well all of us probably watch this. I noticed a lot of people in my news feed watch this, but we're going to go over a few of the finer points of it, because what I like people to try and be a little more conscious of is of the bullshit that people tend to weave into their language, the way they deflect, in this case it's really obvious, so I think it makes a really good example, and it's not like we have to dig particularly deep to find the bullshit in this particular circumstance. But I think still unpacking it is a worthy exercise to make us aware. But in particular, Doug Ford is just not a real master weaver of bullshit. He does it often, but just because you do something often doesn't necessarily mean that you're good at it. And in the case of Doug Ford, he does this often and he's still not very good at it. I think it's just because, much like, he's analogous to Trump in a lot of ways. I think just his insulated, privileged, your handed success kind of no matter how much you fail sort of lifestyle, he hasn't had to really worry. But he's been plummeting in the polls recently, so I think he's a little worried, and here he is answering some questions at this press conference.
The person in the mass vaccination centers, the primary care docs, and the pharmacies have done a great job, and we just need to get more vaccines and really focus on our plan. And our plan is to target the hotspots, be it Peel. I'll give you an example. Peel has 152 pharmacies. That's more than anywhere in the country.
And he seemed like, okay, just like, I know I'm pausing it real quick as I tend to do, without letting him get too far there. But I just wanted to point out, be it Peel, like he's reluctant to mention that Peel is a hotspot. Like he doesn't want to recognize actual hotspots that really aren't his particular, like, under his MPPs, essentially. Is it a conservative riding? If it isn't, he is not overly concerned. His idea of a hotspot is, placating his voters, as we've talked about previously on the show, where a lot of ideas or areas that were considered COVID hotspots for some reason didn't have a lot of COVID cases, but they were conservative ridings. So I just think right off the hop there, how he's decided to start in this video is crooked.
We're ramping up, and as we hope we're going to get more vaccines in May, we're really going to go hard, which we're going right now. We have mobile units set up. We're going into companies, targeting companies, both in Peel. There's 13 public health units with 114 hot areas, really hot areas. So that's where we're going to focus on the vaccines, and we're going to continue. Everyone across the province gets some, but we're going to really focus on those areas.
Like, what did he even really say there? We're going to go hard like we are right now. We're going to continue going hard and do stuff. It's such obvious fluff and air. Going hard at what? Your idea of going hard has got us here. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything.
Your next question comes from Colin DeMello with CTV News. Colin, if you could just unmute your mic.
Hi, good morning, Premier. You can hear me?
Colin.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Hello. Premier, you say the buck stops with you, but I think people across this province are wondering, what does that actually mean? Columnists have recently said there is no effective leadership at Queen's Park. Another one said you are showing raging ineptitude, and some are calling for your resignation. Premier, do you still have the moral authority to lead this province as Premier?
Well, columnists and media, they have the right to voice their opinion. I can tell you our team is strong. Our team is united. I'm so grateful to have the best caucus and cabinet that a premier's ever had. We have the most diverse group of people I've ever seen, smartest group of people. And we're going to continue to lead and get through this pandemic. And once we get through this pandemic, we'll turn the economy on like we have.
Wait a second. Like, what even was his question? What was the journalist's question? Like, how he just answered that. I'm quite certain he didn't answer the question at all. And successfully made it so I forgot what the question... Here, let me go back like 30 seconds here.
Have the moral authority to lead this for your... Another one said you are showing raging ineptitude, and some are calling for your resignation. Premier, do you still have the moral authority to lead this province as Premier?
Well, columnists and media, they have the right to voice their opinion. I can tell you our team is strong. Our team is united.
He definitely doesn't give any reason
the best caucus and cabinet that a premier's ever
why
had.
He has
the group of
moral
I've ever
aptitude.
seen, smartest group of people, and we're going to continue to lead and get through this pandemic.
That's pretty much what he just said, like, before he was asked that question. Like, the fluff, like, yeah, we're going to go hard. We're going to continue to lead. Like, yeah, given everything that's happened, what does some of the stuff you say even mean? And why do you have the moral authority to continue to be premier? And, well, we're just going to continue going on. That's nothing. Like just answering questions like that, have become so passive to. But that is nuts. How are we okay with that? It's just bonkers. Just gonna fucking give her, bro. Yeah. We're gonna give her. We're gonna hurry hard. We're gonna show them what kind of hustle we got on the ice there, and we're gonna get some Tim Hortons after, and that's how it's gonna go. That's how she fucking goes, boys. That's Doug Ford in a nutshell. Jesus Christ, like. He has a particular gift. It's like, I think he's almost better at it than Donald Trump, of like using so many words to, not like a wide variety of words, just an abundance of them, to say nothing at all.
And once we get through this pandemic, we'll turn the economy on like we have in the past.
Just turn that
but
fucker on.
I'm not one
to
walk away from anything.
It's going to turn the economy on,
We're going to continue to lead
that
through
switch.
This pandemic as we have right from the get-go, Colin. Not long ago, before the whole world saw the third wave.
We're going to keep going just as we have from the get-go. Again, what you've been doing from the get-go got us here. Nothing about this is reassuring. Like, I know all of us who were watching this when it was live, our blood was boiling, right? Like, it was just watching this freaking guy.
We led North America with the lowest cases per 100,000 for any region our size. We were the first to close down
for
schools,
a short time.
First to put people in lockdown as much.
We were amongst the first to close down schools. Also amongst the first to open them back up again.
Which is, I hate doing it. We were the first in so many different areas. We were the first to protect people's jobs.
How?
We went out and we made sure we took care of companies, giving them a $20,000 grant, up to a $20,000 grant.
Taking care of the companies is the real priority for Doug Ford here.
Another $20,000. So there's a lot of things, that are moving in the right direction. We see with the vaccines, and let me add the limited amount of vaccines. We're dealing with the cards we've dealt with to get us through this. Once, and the team out there, everyone, thousands of people have shown when we have vaccines, we'll get them into people's arms. We had a record-breaking week this week.
There were tons of vaccines that were sitting in freezers at a risk of going bad. And if they didn't drop the age to 40, they were risking them going bad. That's how bad this distribution system has gone. He is constantly trying to deflect and make you have sympathy, where it's like, yeah, I get, these are difficult times and stuff. But we look at other areas of this country and other areas of the world and know that long before vaccines were a thing at all, they had this thing under control, or at least a lot more control. It's just excuses after excuses, it's just excuses with this guy after excuses. Me English good.
Close to 130,000 yesterday, 130,000 or 131,000 the day before. I'm going more than 18 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week. I'm not going to stop.
Follow up.
I'm just going hard 24/7, not going to stop. None of it means anything. As you're saying there, Jessica, people saying, oh, he's just doing his best, give him a chance. He's not. In terms of, I'm sure he's doing his best at being Doug Ford. No doubt about it there. I have no question that he is being his Doug Fordiest. Right? But in terms of protecting the interests of essential workers and the health and well-being of the majority of the citizens in this country, he has certainly thoroughly failed at that. That can't even be in question, right?
Colin?
Okay, thank you, Premier. You recently said at a news conference that you do not mislead the public. The NDP, though, says that you actually let us off the cliff. They say we are now in free fall, and they say that you have blood on your hands. Premier, why should people trust you to lead us out of the third wave when your government is responsible for bringing us into the third wave and all of the death destruction and devastation that has come along with it.
Well, I'm going to totally,
I
sincerely
like the
disagree with that
fiery,
last comment,
flaming
Colin.
nature of this
And first
question.
of all, when it comes to the NDP and Andrea Horvath, she has the right to say that. Del Duca has the right to say whatever they.
That doesn't address the concern, Doug. Oh, they have a right to say that. Good for them. Like that's not an answer to a question in any capacity.
They want to say. All I know is I've been at this job 24/7, literally.
You just said that
every single day. I haven't missed a day. Haven't taken a break. And something to say that I'm the reason there's a third wave around the world, because it is around the world. To say that I'm responsible for not securing our borders that brought this variance and caused the third wave. To say that I'm responsible for not having
that was just deflection right there, trying to blame the federal government for not securing the border, which is something that the federal government did actually. And so he's out and out misleading the public right there in answering his question about being accused of misleading the public. He is he's got to be purposefully doing it, right? Like, he knows, well, I think that's just how his brain works. Like, he's operating on his typical, like, Doug Ford autopilot, right? Like, he's got to default to deflection to the feds and how things just by nature, if they go badly, they're not his fault. If they go well, it was, of course, 100% everything that he did.
Having enough vaccines, that we wouldn't be in this position if we had tightened our borders, if we had ample
Blaming
vaccines like countries
the
around the world.
Kind of repeating the same thing a couple times
Colin,
over.
we wouldn't
just
be in this
sure
position right now.
You know that he's blaming the feds.
We're going to do everything we can. We're going to move forward, and the results of our actions and the impacts of our actions, I think people will see over the next couple of weeks. And I hope to God that we're right.
Right about what? What are you talking about? Sean, that could very well be a standard political answer. Yeah, that is unfortunately all too common. A political answer that we sort of accept. But in this particular circumstance, though, in the times that we're in, it certainly weighs a lot heavier. And I think it's something we need to repeatedly point out, that this sort of language is bullshit. Like, a lot of people's experiences with politics and how it just seems boring and you don't seem to quite get what's happening and stuff doesn't really seem to make sense. And it's very easy to think that, well, it's just like really complicated and esoteric, and I don't have the know-how to even understand these issues. But it's like, no, you're not stupid for thinking that. It's just, this shit is dumb. It's stupid as hell, and that's what it is. I understand, our default thinking is to want to believe that our leadership is just like generally normal and good for whatever faults it might have. But no, like you're when you feel like this is just boring and weird and it doesn't quite make sense and it makes you a bit uncomfortable, you're definitely not wrong. It's all of those things, that it just is the reality, and I think we need to be honest about that. I don't think people talk about that enough. It's just like we say fluffy bumper sticker sort of dismissive things that make it so we don't have to think about it, right? Like, all politicians lie. They're all full of shit. They're all just in it for their own interests. It's like, yeah, but the devil's in the details. Those details matter. And understanding what they're avoiding and why they're avoiding it, why they aren't saying the things they aren't saying versus the things they are. Yeah, I think knowing that and having an understanding that of that makes, I don't know, takes the veil off things a little bit.
Your next question comes from Laura Stone with the Globe and Mail. Laura, if you can unmute your mic.
Hi, Premier. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Laura.
I'm wondering if you can tell Ontarians what exactly you're sorry for. You talked about off the top, essentially instituting province-wide carding, which all the police forces came out immediately against. Is that what you're sorry for? Are you sorry for closing playgrounds? Are you sorry for not limiting essential businesses as scientific advisors have called for? Are you sorry for not instituting paid sick leave for the past year? What exactly are you sorry for, and what are you going to do about it?
Well, I think once we saw the modeling of 15,000 people, mortalities they said would be going skyrocketing. Yeah, that puts a scare in you. We saw that the mobility of people, they were moving. We saw it on the cell phone. When we saw
the mobility of people, they were moving. We saw it on the cell phone.
Out of the cell phones, people were moving all over the place. This is all about mobility. And what reason I'm sorry we acted too quick on the measures. All I hear is limit mobility, and we move too quick. But anytime, if I make a mistake, I correct it immediately, which we did on the week.
Like, what does he mean by mobility? What is? I just kept hearing mobility, and then I didn't do anything, and then this is just so like turn yourself inside out. You're cringing so much, freaking awkward. It's so embarrassing. I don't, maybe just because it hits closer to home, I'm feeling like this is like stinging me more right now than any bit of Trump footage I've ever watched. This is clocking up there with that level of just fucking weird, man. Something else.
Weekend. And again, when it comes to playgrounds, the people were telling me limit the mobility, and we
That's like the
corrected
fifth
that.
time
I've
you said that, but we don't know what it means.
The parks have always been open.
Well, the thing about keeping the parks open, and a lot of people, I see a lot of people in general just trying to blame people for being outside and gathering outside. Health experts never wanted to shut down gathering outdoors for the most part. Sitting with a few friends in the park was generally considered probably not that big a deal. So shutting down the parks was that was a strategic political play on his part to try and blame people for continuing to go to parks rather than blaming his actions and his planning.
Public health unit, they if they want to lock down the parks, or if they want to, close things, that's their choice. But I think we've done the right decision. And again, the reason I'm here and I'm apologizing because we moved too quick with.
I think we did the right thing, but I'm apologizing because we moved too quick. He hasn't moved too quick on anything. Isn't that screamingly obvious? Moved too quick. What do words mean to Doug Ford?
With having people being pulled over per se, you call it carding, but I want to tell the people of Ontario,
it carding.
I've never
don't like
ever
that word.
directed the police. I never have. I never will. The police have the discretion in their powers.
Follow up, Laura?
Premier, I think a lot of the scientific advisors, including the science table,
The questions are so
would
loud.
quibble with your characterization that you moved too fast. I mean, you didn't do anything on essential business. You have not done anything on sick pay, and I know you say that you're going to.
Move
And your
too fast on
government
what?
it has closed all outdoor recreational facilities. I mean, it just seems like everything you guys did on Friday was the opposite of what the advisors were calling for. So how can you say that you moved too fast, and are you going to reverse or change some of those other recommendations that most of the medical community is calling for?
Again, Laura, the modeling was showing that the numbers were going up to 15,000, and thank God they haven't, because of the actions that we've taken in the past. Laura, I want to remind you and everyone.
Things didn't get to absurd, record-breaking levels because we decided to do the bare minimum. Pat me on the back, please. Doug Ford has spoken.
We have this most strict restrictions in all of North America. You know, we've had Peel and Toronto basically in lockdown since September, and we took.
Yeah, they shouldn't have been open in September. It shouldn't have been open. Kids shouldn't have been going to school at all. Malls should not have been opened again. But you decided to do that in the summertime.
Action. We moved quickly on the schools. We locked down the schools.
No, you didn't.
Sure we put the stay-at-home order in right away.
Teachers have been having to go to work.
This is not about telling people.
It's an outright lie.
In the park, or take a jog, or ride on the bike. Over and over and over again, every doctor I talk to, and I talk to endless doctors,
I got it.
Hundreds of them. Say limit the mobility, get your exercise, go ride your bike. After you're done, we need to stay at home. And in some areas around the world.
But many people, including myself, have to continue to go to work. He is conveniently, kind of leaving out that part that people like myself have to get on the TTC every day. And we look around and see lots of other people on the train. It is so unbelievably misleading. And, it's unfortunate that a lot of his voter base and a lot of your more conservative strongholds in this province have very little idea of what the day-to-day in Toronto, or a city that has very regularly used public transit, what that looks like. What that is like. Yeah, hundreds of doctors, the best doctors. It is. It's very Trumpian. It's the typical, slick used car salesman stuff. He's not telling you anything about the car other than it's the best. You don't know anything other than this guy thinks it's very good, and we trust him for some reason. I don't know. I don't know, man. It's extremely Trumpian, though. Like, very. But I feel like he's like, Doug Ford is somehow out-Trumped Trump. Maybe I have the luxury of saying that because Trump hasn't been around in the public eye for a few months. Thank goodness. What a breath of fresh air that's been. Jesus Christ. So he says he's moving forward on sick days, right? Let's remind you that there were sick days in this province. One of the first things that Doug Ford did when he got into office, however, was he axed them. Doug Ford got rid of those sick days before this pandemic even happened. kind of highlighting the reason why we have things like sick days that are both good for workers' rights and the overall public health and public health system. So he axed those sick days. He's been advised by experts over the past year to reinstate those sick days, in particular because of the pandemic, obviously. Something he has out and out avoided doing. And now that he's seen his numbers drop, let's see here. We have some things on... Ontarians sour on Ford's pandemic management. It's from the CBC. As they did for many governing leaders across the country, Ford's poll numbers soared in the early months of the pandemic in March 2020 before the virus shut down Ontario. Polling by the Angus Reid Institute gave Ford an approval rating of 31%, but by June, Ford's approval rating has surged to 60%, and he retained those numbers into the summer. But Ford's grades on the pandemic were sliding already before the latest developments. In early April, ARI found that just 32% of Ontarians thought he was doing a good job. So he plummeted back down again. And now that he is, plummeting, now he's suddenly very concerned. Now it's the one thing he definitely didn't move too fucking quick on were the sick days, right? One of the major things that should have been done. And it shouldn't have been not there in the first place. But as he goes on to say in this video, which, I'm not going to dive any further into, but he does say later in that clip that, we're going to roll out something that you've seen nowhere else in the province. Well, hardly anywhere else in the province has sick days. And that doesn't make it any better. The fact that sick days are not a standard thing in a country like ours is pretty disgusting. It's just straight up irresponsible and cruel to workers' rights. But so now he's saying, all right, sick days are coming. But he has the ability to institute this fairly quickly. It doesn't have to be thought about too much. Just get people paid sick days. This doesn't have to be complicated, but he's going to make it complicated. Because he's going to be very worried that the employers might have to pay people to not work. And obviously, in the conservative mind, that is a way bigger concern than having to go to work and possibly spread a deadly disease in the middle of a pandemic. Priorities brought to you by the conservatives, folks. That's the game. They will never set a people first precedent. Your labor is essential. But your happiness, your health, and your livelihood is not. We extract your labor. In return, you get the bare minimum so we can maybe extract your labor tomorrow. If you die, that's probably okay. We'll extract it from someone else. Your labor is not expendable. We continue to need that. Your life is. And it's never been more abundantly clear in this country, at least in 100 years or so, that this is the reality of neoliberalism, that this is how it goes. So Doug Ford absolutely should be forced to resign. It isn't just some people calling for his resignation. It's a lot. This is extremely serious. It should be taken extremely seriously. This isn't like a willy-nilly thing like, oh, we just don't like the guy, let's get rid of him. Although, in reality, if we were living in a very much more democratic society, it should be that easy. That if we just don't like him, we can get his ass out. But besides that point, this is in particular extremely serious. And I would love to connect with people out there who are perhaps a little more experienced at organizing political action and things like that. But I'm very interested in actually pursuing action to put pressure on Doug Ford to resign. This is a moment that people are united on, and we need to get people politically engaged to do the right thing. And I think this is a moment to do that. They don't come around very often, and in a way, I guess thank goodness for that, sort of. All right. Let's move on to the next thing. We're going to talk about good old Tucker, our boy Tucker Carlson. Of course, our boy Tucker Carlson has some thoughts and feelings and words on the Derek Chauvin trial. Take a wild guess at how this goes down. I bet we all have a deep feeling. So again, much like analyzing the bullshit that spews from Ford, in the case of Tucker Carlson, I feel his bullshit is extremely obvious. And the grift that he's running is thinly veiled at best, but it makes for great examples. And we can look for this and find this in all sorts of ways throughout internet pundits, perhaps even myself, if you wanted to, critique the lefty YouTubers and whatnot. But there is a certain application to critical theory here, where we're listening to the things that they're saying and not saying, and what their priorities are. And there's actually, I have two clips of Tucker here, and the way they juxtapose even is pretty interesting. So here we go.
Carlson tonight, the drama. But at least the Chauvin trial is over. Officer Derek Chauvin was convicted yesterday on all counts. The trial went on for more than a month, and at times the testimony was complex and it was technical. But at the center of the case, there was always really just one piece of relevant evidence, and it was the videotape of George Floyd's death in the street in Minneapolis in May. If you haven't seen the tape recently, it remains every bit as shocking as the day it was shot. You watch it and you can see that George Floyd knows on some level that he's going to die. And in the end, of course, he does die. It's crushing that way. Millions of Americans reacted in that way. They saw it. They were horrified. And many decided as they watched it that Officer Chauvin must have committed an act of criminal brutality. So really, it's not surprising that the jury yesterday concluded the same thing. The images in that tape seem to tell the whole story. And in fact, honestly, it is possible that even if no one outside the courtroom in Minneapolis had ever seen that tape, just the jury, it's possible Derek Chauvin still would have been convicted. The tape is that powerful. That's
all right. He's padded that a lot. He's said a lot of sensible things so far, right? He hasn't gone completely over the edge, but you can almost smell it. You can smell the bullshit just kind of wafting in through the vent. It's just slowly seeping into the room. Here comes the big butt.
Totally possible. Unfortunately, we don't know that. We can only speculate about it because that's not at all what actually happened. The George Floyd video went around the world.
Let me tell you, me, Tucker Carlson, who has access to the same information all of you people do in regards to this trial, what really happened.
Became the centerpiece of a new political movement. Political actors harnessed the emotion over that video and over Floyd's death to control the country and change it forever. And then, and this is the key and the thing that we should think a lot about, in the last month, some of these same people went further than that. They worked to change the outcome of Derek Chauvin's trial. And that is the one thing that we can never allow, no matter how we feel about a specific case. Civilized countries have impartial systems of justice. That's the whole.
Yes, they absolutely do. I believe it's Tucker Carlson in another instance, if not him, some other Fox News idiot that was going off about Joe Biden commenting on the outcome of the case. But the jurors were already put away. They had no access to the outside world. There's no way they're going to have any idea what the president or anybody else has to say. That is the time when public figures actually can comment on those things because of that. But of course, the people on the conservative punditry present it not as such, right? And yeah, they absolutely screen the jurors. And I don't know, did you watch the testimony, Tucker? Did you watch this trial? Because I did. Not super thoroughly in every inch of it, but I saw enough where the testimony on behalf of all the witnesses, that video, everything that was corroborated, the facts were crystal clear. And he wants to conjure up this narrative about how because there is a public outcry about the obviously disgusting actions of that police officer, he wants to make it about that. And instead of, I don't know, probably if there wasn't such a big public outcry about it, would justice have been served? It's amazing the way they always want to frame this and which power it sympathizes with.
Hallmark of a civilized country. It's what separates the country you want to live in from a place you don't even want to visit. Civilized countries demand, above all, that every citizen is held to precisely the same standard under the law as every other citizen is. And that applies no matter how popular or
unless you're a police officer versus a black man. Then that's okay.
Popular a particular defendant might be, it applies no matter the alleged crime. Countries like this, civilized countries, do not tolerate jury intimidation.
Third time you said that.
You see it, you stop it. They don't allow the threat of violence to influence the outcome of a trial, ever, under any circumstances. That would be the opposite of justice. It would be mob rule. And America used to strive hard to be like that. And yet, just yesterday, we saw the president of the United States
this is the clip, actually.
Jeez. Behind Derek Chauvin's prosecution. And he did that even as the jury in Minneapolis was still deliberating the case.
They were deliberating the case. That means, again, just to emphasize that they have no access to the outside world and could have no possible way of knowing what the president of the United States is saying. When a jury is deliberating, they are secluded. So, meanwhile, Joe Biden, he's trying to influence the jury with his political rhetoric. That is impossible, Tucker. That cannot happen. You are either a excessively stupid man or a liar. Possibly both.
We saw one of the most powerful members of the United States Congress tell a group of angry people they should act out in violence if the jury dared to acquit. We watched this.
Fucking love Maxine. Hell yeah, girl.
City of Minneapolis concede responsibility for the death of George Floyd right in the middle of the trial, before Derek Chauvin's lawyer could even sum up his case. And then, least noted but most ominously of all, we saw thugs threaten a defense witness with death.
Oh, ding, 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 ding. Did everyone hear the dog whistle there? Let's hear it again.
Before Derek Chauvin's lawyer could even sum up his...
There's a magic word that Tucker says here. And it's a very magical word for white people of his particular type of ideological persuasion. It's the word that indicates I'm not saying the racial slur, but I do in fact really want to say it. Let's keep our ears open.
Case. And then, least noted but most ominously of all, we saw thugs threaten a defense witness with death. They smeared pig.
Thugs. Yeah. When you use that word that way, we know what you really want to say, Tucker.
Pig blood on the door of what they thought was his house, and then get away with it. No one in authority seemed especially interested in catching them.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Tom. And police officers don't seem to be worried about catching someone who committed vandalism, you know, as opposed to, you know, maybe being worried about murder and stuff. They're not out catching the black people. That's the real injustice, according to Tucker Carlson. But yeah, Trump did, on repeated occasions, tell people to commit acts of violence. You know, even in his initial rallies before he was elected, he was telling people, you know, oh, knock him out. It's fine. I'll pay for your lawyer fees. And then what else? Yeah, well, of course, January 6th. And throughout that day, he tacitly, you know, basically was encouraging their violence, but trying to be tactful enough as to, you know, avoid being directly reprimanded for it to some degree. How he weaseled out of that, you know, goes to show. Power protects power, all that bullshit. So yeah, the real injustice here is the protests against state power, not the fact that state power commits violence against citizens. We know which side Tucker Carlson's bread is buttered here, right? Anyway, now let's go back and take a look at this video. And there's going to be an interesting contrast here. Here, let me go a little further in the last one, though, just to make sure.
These were terrifying acts, and it doesn't matter whether you think that Derek Chauvin was guilty and deserves what he got. It doesn't matter who you voted for. It doesn't matter what you think about anything else. Seeing mobs trying to influence this trial should shock and horrify you at least as much as the George Floyd video did. This is a picture of a country moving backward at high speed. But the strange thing is that most people didn't seem shocked or upset by any of this. They
Keep in mind, he was just saying you should be shocked and upset about what you saw in the George Floyd video. He did just say that. He did just admit that, right? We all heard that? Keep that in mind.
seem relieved by the verdict. They'd, of course, seen the boarded up buildings. They'd watched the troops in the streets, and they understood very well what an acquittal would mean. They believed that a conviction, whether it was justified or not, would buy the country peace. Many people thought this, not just cynical people, most people, including many Republicans. Some of them said so. If we obeyed Maxine Waters and ignored the pig blood, hopefully the chaos would end. And you can see why they felt that way.
Well, hopefully if justice is served, police officers will stop killing people willy-nilly. You know, like the same day that Derek Chauvin was sentenced, or not sentenced, got his verdict. That same day, police officers needlessly murdered a black woman. A young girl, actually. I don't even think she was legally an adult yet. That same day. So you tell me, Tucker Carlson, what your definition of violence and intimidation is, and which side does that lie on?
After 11 months of violence and intimidation from BLM, mostly unrestrained, Americans just decided to pay the ransom.
Mostly just unrestrained violence. The way he portrays this is such...
They understood Derek Chauvin as a sacrifice for the sins of a nation. And on television, they told us this was the case. They said it in the clearest terms. America is on trial, they told us. It's not just Derek Chauvin, one cop from Minneapolis on the stand. No, it's all of us on the stand.
Now, this is funny because he's actually kind of almost onto something. He is right in a way that I think there definitely are people within the powers that be that see that Derek Chauvin as a sacrificial lamb to be able to say, see, we hold police officers accountable sometimes. Police officers can go to jail when there's like 40 witnesses in a 10-minute long video. It can happen. So you see, maybe our system is not so corrupt after all. That line is already being disseminated and spread as a talking point. But that's certainly not the angle that Tucker Carlson is attempting to take there, right? Okay. So anyway, let's go on to that next video. Because our precious, precious boy Tucker Carlson has a wee bit of a meltdown because this little interview with someone from law enforcement, I think he was expecting to be very softball and easy and feed his narrative, and it doesn't quite go that way.
Gavin is a former deputy sheriff with the New York City Sheriff's Department. He joins us with his perspective on what this means for law enforcement. Hey, Gavin, thanks so much for coming on tonight. Who's going to become a cop going forward, do you think?
It just starts right up. Who's going to become a cop now? Who would ever want to do it now that you can't just kill people without consequence? Who's going to take up the mantle? It's outrageous. And kind of right off the bat, it's not going so well for Tucker to approach this conversation this way.
Well, I think people will still become police officers. This really is a learning experience for everyone. Let's face it, what we saw in that video was pure savagery. I mean, the documentary evidence showed the police officer putting his knee on the perpetrator's neck while he was rear cuffed and his stomach was on the ground, causing positional asphyxia.
Note his tight mouth, pulled to the side, furrowed brow, like a confused puppy observing a magic trick.
So what I'd like to see, Tucker, is I'd like to see more training for police. I'd like to see the police trained as EMTs, like in the fire department. For example, in the New York City Fire Department, we have firefighters that are EMTs. But who gets to the scene first in most of these situations? It's the police. So in reviewing the tape, what I noticed was that the police officer removed the subject, Mr. Floyd, from his vehicle, and he was able to handcuff him, and then he was able to seat him on the ground, and he was handcuffed. At that point, they should have left him there. You know, there was no reason to move him, and obviously, Mr. Floyd was he was emotionally disturbed. And at that point, you may want to say, "Hey, Mr. Floyd, let me take your pulse." Things of this nature, and we have to change the way we deal with people. Now, I've used I've used force on literally over 500 people in my 21-year career in the New York City Department of Correction and in the New York City Sheriff's Department. I've never had anybody go unconscious. And, you know, that was clearly an excessive, unjustified use of force. I think the verdict was just. I think we had documentary evidence, we had testimonial evidence, and, you know, it was an open and shut case. But moving forward, what we need to do, in my opinion, is we need to have...
How about enforce the law? Okay, do we need to do that? So hold on, wait, slow down. Do we enforce the law? Like, let's say people...
Do we enforce the law? That's the outrageous part. We're just not going to enforce the law now? That's the dichotomy to Tucker Carlson. Just a moment ago in the other clip where you saw him say that watching that footage was horrific and that, you know, You were right to feel outraged by it. You know, that same man is now advocating that footage and that moment and Chauvin's actions merely as enforcing the law. The Tucker Carlson is a disgusting racist. Obviously. He peddles in racism. He peddles in inspiring fear into those that watch him, and will always spin a web that leads in that direction. Well, you know, if you're right to feel outraged by that video, but, you know, you should also feel outraged by mob rule. And, instead of, you know, just simply arresting a person like normal and, you know, maybe being worried about their health and well-being while you're arresting them. It does not enforcing the law matter anymore?
People are going through the windows of Macy's and the cops are just standing there. Do they resign?
No.
Because obviously their honor is being violated, but they're not doing anything about it. When do they start doing something about it and protecting everyone else?
See, the windows at Macy's, those being violated is the real violation.
Not just George Floyd.
No. What I want people to protect. I want the police to protect people. But when specifically what we're dealing with a person in custody who was handcuffed and he was subdued.
Right.
At that point, you know, we have to take a different tact. And one of the things I just want to suggest, Tucker,
I'm totally willing to believe that.
Oh, yep. I'm totally willing to believe that. He is blowing fuses right now.
Yeah, the U.S. Department of Justice came out with a position paper on positional asphyxia and sudden death. It was published in 1995 and again in 1998. I think every law enforcement officer should read that. It should be read at roll calls. Because what it does, it talks about the physiology of a struggle. Now, like I said, Mr. Floyd was brought under control. What should have happened at that point is EMS should have been summoned and he should have been placed in an ambulance. And a supervisor should have been called to the scene. I just think that it was excessive and it shouldn't happen. And what I'd like to say,
the guy who did it looks like he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. So,
and that's obviously the real crime here.
I'm kind of more worried about the rest of the country, which, thanks to police inaction, in case you haven't noticed, is like boarded up. So that's more my concern. But I appreciate.
That's more my concern. But I appreciate. Like he thinks he's being
Come on, Ed
clever
Gavin,
and
thank
satisfying.
you.
Thank
Nope,
you.
Done.
Nope.
Thank
done. Talking about increasing police training so they do a better job where they can still arrest the bad guy, but also maybe provide him medical assistance if he needs it. It's tantamount to just not enforcing the law. Look, if we can't kneel on the necks of black people that we're arresting, we might as well be living in totalitarianism, right? Which is also would be cool because I am obviously an authoritarian simp. This is me speaking as Tucker Carlson. I'm sorry I didn't do the voice. My Tucker Carlson is too similar to Ben Shapiro. They're very similar in their nasally annoyance. These fucking people, man. Doug Ford's another failure. Tucker Carlson is an outright racist. So, you know, moving forward, when you say, you know, I feel for people in Doug Ford's position. Here, I'm going to go to here. Trying to find something. Sorry. Oh, maybe it got deleted, but the editor of BlogTO, I think a friend of mine got a screen cap of it, actually. Because, yeah, the editor of BlogTO, which already is, obviously it's a super, neoliberal, simpy sort of rag of a blog. Yeah, she tweeted this. I'm sorry if this is a breach of journalistic impartiality, but I want to give Doug Ford a hug. This is heartbreaking to watch. Must be so hard for him. Oh, just, God. Ugh, disgusting. Like, where is your brain? Sorry if this is a breach. Yeah, you're goddamn right it is. It's a breach of a lot of different kind of ethics. You want to give the guy a hug? Why? It must be a lot of work to completely fuck over the province and do the opposite of what trained experts were advising. It's got to take a real toll on a guy, right? Yeah. So anyway, want to have sympathy for people like Doug Ford in their position, or have sympathy for the things that Tucker Carlson is saying. Or you're encountering people who are like, well, I don't think it's all bad. I think they have a bit of a point. I hope you remember some of the things that I pointed out in this video where they don't have, in a lot of ways, even a shred of a point. It is deflection and outright neoliberalistic propaganda and white supremacist propaganda. And it's screaming on its face that it's bullshit. And you can break it down sentence by sentence and word by word just like I did. Because it's honestly, when it comes to some of this stuff, it's not that hard. You can listen to a single sentence and go, that was very conveniently said. And I think the more in tune we are with it and the more sensitive we are to it, the better armed we are against it. And people are wide awake against Doug Ford right now. And like I said, this has got to be a moment that we take advantage of and start to organize real political action to put pressure on this guy to step down. We can do it. It can happen. We are more than strong enough, I think, to make that possible. And as always, we have our sacred leader of Antifa, this duck, jamming out to our theme music. I've actually gone a little bit over the hour. I feel like it's been a while since I've done that. Maybe I usually do that. I don't know. I don't usually time it that much. I see how long the video is after I've uploaded it. All right. Well, we thank you very much to the 10 people that are watching the live stream right now, it seems. I don't think I usually get that many at once. Just so you know, we are a call-in show, so on the next episode when you're watching, you can call in. And right now you do that through Facebook Messenger. And you can take calls, talk to me on the air, question me, put pressure on me, debate me, or make some jokes. Whatever you feel like doing. It's usually a good time. So thank you so much for tuning in to The Rough Report and listening to my crazed rantings. And hope to see you again soon. Again, the best way to support the show, by the way, like, share, subscribe, get the word out there. I don't have anything going on Patreon or any kind of fundraising initiative at the moment. So as of now, that's the best way to support. Please do that. And also, I'm looking at tentatively May 5th is going to be a live streaming music show. So if you enjoyed the last one, that still is available to watch on the YouTube channel. Tune in for the next one, and it's going to be bigger and better than the last time. So On that note, I think I've covered everything I was looking to cover tonight. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and stay rough.